Before we dive into compression, let's first understand why we even use it in the first place. Any sound coming out of your speakers moves back and forth, and there are quiet parts and louder parts. I can easily demonstrate this with my voice. The closer I get to the microphone, the louder I sound. The further away I am, the quieter I become. This volume difference is called the dynamic range of an audio. In other words, the dynamic range is the difference between the loudest and the quietest part of audio. In this audio, the loudest is 0 dB and the quietest part is -2 dB. So the dynamic range of this audio is the loudest part minus the quietest part, which is 2 dB. And the reason we compress is that we want this difference or this back and forth to be more manageable and more controlled. When a sound has less dynamic range, it's easier to focus on and pay attention to because it feels tighter and more consistent. Here's how this take sounds before compression. And here's how it sounds after compression. You can even see the visual difference here. The compressed take with less dynamic range should feel more consistent and more controlled. Now, just because you understand what it means to compress, that doesn't mean you understand how to use it. So, an example. Here's a waveform representing any audio, and here's a compressor. The threshold of a compressor is like a line you set. When the sound goes louder than this line or crosses this line, the compressor starts to work and controls how loud it gets. Attack is the time it takes for the signal to be fully compressed, and release is actually the opposite. The release time is how long the compressor takes to let go after making the sound quieter or stop compression. Ratio specifies the amount of reduction applied to the signal above the threshold. Imagine you are squeezing a balloon. The harder you squeeze, the ratio in a compressor is like deciding how much to squeeze when the sound gets too loud. For example, if you have a 4:1 ratio and the sound gets 4 times louder than what you want, the compressor only lets one part through and squeezes the other 3 parts down. Now, let's not get too excited about compression. Many digital sounds don't need compression to sound consistent because they already have little to no dynamic range. However, when it comes to human-performed recordings that might be imperfect, you'll almost always want to use a compressor. If you like this video, then consider subscribing and also hit the like button. And if you didn't like the video, then give it a dislike. I'll see you in another video.